Well, we're joined by Laurence Skelly from DED with this big announcement that's been released at midday on Friday that you're looking at what's going on down at the Villa and the Gaiety complex. I have to say, I had heard this through Jungle Drums quite a few days ago now. I was kind of thinking it isn't quite what they were thinking because I was hearing that they're going to sell it off, but you're not doing that. Over to you, really. I mean, you tell us what your plans are.
No, not at all. This is not to sell this, what is very, very valuable and strategic asset for the Isle of Man, both culturally and I think, for government too. What we are doing here is actually following on from the scope of government report, of which there's been two over the last, 10 plus years, have identified a number of areas that we should look at alternative means of service delivery, and that's what we're doing here. Is we are looking and putting out expressions of interest for an alternative operator, and that is looking at the private sector effectively.
So instead of people who are working for the government now and they're on payroll and they get holidays and they get pensions, you're going to move them into some sort of another company that will run it, privatising, but not the actual building.
Yeah, what we're looking here is actually you're very, very right with regards to the staff and so forth there. What we have done, and this is why we've actually delayed the response, because we must tell them exactly what's going on before the announcement here today publicly. But no, what we're doing here is really testing the market. Is there an alternative operator out there in the private sector that would operate the Villa and the Gaiety?
Everyone remembers the stories about the bottle washers at the Villa, where they were on X amount, and the private sector, they were paying half that amount, for instance, because the things had gone in different directions over the year. Is that the sort of thing you're trying to look at, getting the staff on the cheap, basically? No,
it's nothing to do with, to be quite frank, it's nothing to do with the staff. It's really about the overall operation. We as government are in a commercial enterprise here, and the scope of government challenged us to say, should government be in the commercial business? And this is what we're trying to do. Is we have a situation here where we've got a very limited market, and people always say, well, you'll always need a subvention, and it's obviously a very substantial subvention. And so I think our duty to the taxpayer is, we've had a report here that says you should test the market, and that's exactly what we're going to do. But this is the overall operation of both facilities, very important facilities. You've got the Gaiety Theatre, you've got the Villa, you've got the Royal Hall, you've got the cinema, you've got all of other facilities that go with that.
I mean, I've used that thing many times when I talk to people. Probably the only government this side of Russia that actually runs a cinema. I mean, that is
correct.
Something that clearly a government shouldn't really be in, and that would be another part of this that would be opted out.
It has to be part and parcel of the overall package.
Are you looking for one person to take it all on, or are you looking to put a different operator potentially into each area?
We believe that as a joint operating operation, shall we say, with the Villa and the Gaiety, there's a number of shared services there that would really demand that you can operate it as one entity. We did investigate the prospect of decoupling. However, we did feel that as one entity, it would make more commercial sense.
Would this see the end of the government getting involved in things like the Jacksons being put on? I mean, probably Mr. Crenny would hate me for using that one, because of all the things, that one didn't go well, did it? I mean, would this stop it in future being that situation where the government takes a hit?
Yeah, and exactly. You ask yourself, whilst that one may have not performed as well as we would like, overall the aggregate was a success in terms of the budget. However, if the private sector had booked the Jacksons, they'd lost money. I don't think we would have had questions in the House of Keys or Tynwald.
Well, it wouldn't have gone ahead, would it? And certainly somebody else would have pulled the plug on that one, by the numbers were not there.
Well, they might have, but they would have had their own decision to make, and it wouldn't be a political decision. And that's what we're trying to, and that's what the scope of government was saying. The scope of government was saying, why are you as government in these commercial entities?
Right. Now, obviously, everyone's going to be in flux. I'm talking about the staff who'll be watching this with interest. I know they've been told, but they'll be looking for some signs of what's going on. They'll feel that this is not what they want. But what reassurances will you be able to put into place? Will they be taken on at the same rates? Will the same amount of people be required? Will that be in your consultation?
No, we are following all the obvious protocols, and that's why we've been speaking to the unions and so forth. And I would say this is absolutely no reflection on the work that they've done, which has been sterling over many years. In fact, they've managed to reduce the budget over the last few years, with regards to the constraint. So they have operated operated, I think, in a very lean operation as best they possibly could under the constraints they got. But can I give them assurances is the question, and I fully accept that. I can't give them overall assurances. What I can do is ensure that we will follow protocols. So if there is any, it should have, and I think we have to ask this and this is all we're doing, is testing the market. You know, is there somebody that's credible? Is there somebody that can put a viable proposition and will actually respect the reputation that we want out of this prime asset? You know, so we've got to answer all those questions, and should that come forward, then we would sit down with the staff and discuss those proposals.
But we all know the private sector will look at things differently, because I mean the staff you got there come Christmas, or the TT, whatever the real pinch points when they're working very long hours and therefore overtime is incurred. Private enterprise will treat this differently.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I mean, you're obviously talking about the staff expense and so forth.
I think that's because in my head I'm thinking you're retaining the buildings anyway.
We do.
So you're not getting rid of any of the actual.
Well, you know, there is the maintenance aspect that does need to go alongside with the operation, but we as government would actually manage that particular aspect. Okay. So yes, no, I fully accept. This is a concern. You know, they would be very concerned, and the assurance I would give is that what we will do is we will follow all the protocols that.
Right. So some person operator, whatever, basically would rent the buildings off you and then do what they want with it, but will you have some interference? That's probably the wrong word, but will you be able to have some influence?
It's what they call a service level agreement. So you would, you know, there's certain reputational issues that you want to protect, you know, in terms of what is acceptable and what isn't. And what we're trying to do here is look to see, is there an operator? And if I come back to the point there, you know, we have a limited footfall, and you know, you mentioned you know, Jackson's and others that may not have attracted. But what we do have is we also have a captive audience, a captive market, and whilst we can concentrate a lot on the evening events, it's really the daytime where there's I think tremendous capacity there. You know, so can we expand more conferences? Can we get more corporate hospitality, weddings, and various other things? You know, and that's what a commercial operator might be able to bring a slightly different offering to the table.
But I mean, under the regulations and rules that are there at the minute, there's certain nights, there are charity nights, for instance, the Villa Marina, and I know they put on like the Sounds of the Caves when they got a spare Saturday and those sort of things. Yes. That's because the government can do what they want, can't they? And this won't be the case. You won't be able to just walk in there and say, I mean, the Guild is another example. Over the years, they've had to start paying much more rent. I mean, that will be, for everybody, will be a commercial rent situation. There won't be any government, let's have it for free for the day, boys. Well,
there is a discounted rate for charities as we currently operate. And there is also the work with and contribution, I might add, by the Arts Council to a number of performances, both at the Gaiety and the Villa. So there is consideration there, I think, on the charitable status of those and how we would consider a pricing structure.
With this coming into the public domain and what you're doing, I presume you've had some inkling there is some interest out there, or could this be a bit of embarrassment that no one comes forward at all?
Well, if you know, I mean, you're right. I mean, there have been people over the years, I will say, because of course this has been muted for quite some time and been identified, I think, back as far as 2006 in the first original scope of government report. You know, the question is, why haven't we tested it? And that's all we're trying to do here, is we're trying to follow through what, you know, that report has stated. You know, I think every MHK that was elected had this in their manifesto. Scope of government must be addressed. We must look at all those things. And that's all we're doing. And at the end of the day, should nobody come forward, should there not be a viable, credible partner in terms of available, then what we will do, we'll revert back to what we're already doing here. But we will at least have tested the market. And I think MHKs and politicians will be able to say, listen, this is what we've got.